One second you're in a Porsche going 160 miles an hour. These are the untold stories of football players. And by the time Zlatan turned 19, he was already one of Sweden's most wanted. Let me explain. Growing up, Zlatan didn't know any different. His mother was incarcerated, his father was an alcoholic who could barely afford to put food on the table, and he spent much of his childhood starving, desperate for money, acceptance, and a way out. He made himself a promise: if he ever saw a glimmer of hope, he'd never slow down. But that promise led to the wildest night of his life. As a teenager, Zlatan was on a mission to achieve two things: becoming a professional footballer and, well, when you grow up in his neighborhood, the first thing you dream about is having a cool car. But playing for youth clubs and struggling to make a name for himself wasn't enough. He needed money. So in public, he took a job working at the local dock. But behind the scenes, he was living a double life. Just to put food on the table, he turned to crime, stealing bikes and shoplifting. But once he got his first taste of cash and the rush that came with it, he was hooked. The thrill became an addiction, and as his love for the game faded, so did his football career. Yet, that same life of crime kept him afloat long enough to accomplish one of his goals. Zlatan's heart pounded in his chest. He had escaped. But that night, as he lay in bed, his entire life flashed before his eyes. Zlatan was scared, because that rush, that adrenaline, was something he never wanted to let go of. But right then and there, he made a decision: instead of chasing that high on the streets, he would channel it on the field. He would pour that killer instinct into football, chase his dreams, and become one of the most lethal strikers the game had ever seen. So the next time you see Zlatan dominating, just remember, one night, one decision, created a legend. If only my boy Lukaku had learned his lesson before it was too late. Back in 2017, he was breaking records on and off the field. But deep down, he had a secret. Even though he was playing for Everton, his heart wasn't in it. All he could think about was how his time there had peaked. And a text from his boy. Lukaku thought long and hard and realized, it was time for a change. So on July 1st, he took a gamble with his career, demanded a transfer, and booked a vacation. Because what better way to clear his mind and let off some steam than a trip to the ultimate party destination in America? With his bags packed, Lukaku hopped on a flight and left the country. He and his boy Pogba touched down in Beverly Hills, rented a mansion straight out of a movie, and waited anxiously for Lukaku's transfer to go through. Until it was official. Lukaku and Pogba were now teammates. And if you know these two, you know they weren't just going to call it a night, they had to celebrate. And that's when things got wild. Oh yeah, it got that crazy. The neighbors might have tolerated the music. But when they looked up and saw a dirt bike soaring through the air, that was the final straw. The neighbors weren't letting this slide. They called the cops over and over, until the sixth time. And that's when the police finally pulled up. Now, if you know anything about the LA cops, you know they don't play when things get out of hand. Zero tolerance. So the moment they arrived, Lukaku was arrested. But our boy got lucky. Because his millions didn't just buy him a mansion, they bought him top-tier lawyers. In the end, all it cost him was a fine. But what Sergio Ramos did, that almost cost him his life. See, Ramos has always been a wild one. Growing up in Sevilla, he craved the thrill, he was willing to risk it all just to feel alive. His parents, though, were terrified that one day, his recklessness would end in disaster. So they made his older brother step in. His job, convince Ramos to channel that energy into football. They signed him up for a youth club, hoping it would be enough. But for Ramos, a simple sport was never going to satisfy that hunger for danger. He was thriving, yet something still felt missing. Football just didn't have the danger he craved. So despite his parents and his club forbidding him from riding bikes, Ramos lived recklessly, doing it in secret. It became an addiction. Every time he gripped those handlebars, he felt untouchable. Until one mistake nearly cost him everything. Against all odds, Ramos not only recovered, he came back stronger than ever, becoming an even greater footballer than he had imagined. You'd think that coming face to face with death would have made him give up his biking obsession. But fast forward to 2021, and Ramos just couldn't help himself. Let's just hope he doesn't end up in the ER again. Like that time a footballer went from perfectly healthy one day to fighting for his life the next, with doctors having no explanation. Back in 2010, Virgil van Dijk wasn't the player he dreamed of being. And time was running out. Behind the scenes, his family was struggling, so to help put food on the table, Van Dijk took a part-time job as a dishwasher. That's when he was faced with the toughest decision of his life. Things at the restaurant were getting hectic, and Van Dijk's manager gave him an ultimatum: his job or his dream. For Van Dijk, there was no question. He knew he'd never forgive himself if he didn't at least try. So he took off his apron, walked away, and bet everything on football. And luckily, he did. That year, he switched positions and started dominating on the pitch. His hard work paid off when he landed the opportunity of a lifetime, getting transferred to a Dutch pro club and earning a call-up to the Netherlands national team. His future had never looked brighter. But then, out of nowhere, something felt off. His teammates started noticing he wasn't himself. Out on the pitch, Van Dijk looked exhausted, sluggish, maybe he was just coming down with a cold. He figured it was best to call it a day, head home, and rest. Nothing serious, or so he thought. Van Dijk started feeling so nauseous that he decided to take a detour and head to the hospital. But when the doctors checked him out, everything seemed normal. Their advice? Go home and sleep it off. Big mistake. As he lay in bed, a sudden, stabbing pain shot through his chest. He could barely stand. Panic set in, something was seriously wrong, and just in time, Mama Van Dijk showed up to check on him. The moment she walked in, she saw her son struggling just to stay conscious. She had no choice. Rushing him back to the hospital, doctors immediately realized the gravity of the situation. Van Dijk was fading fast. Dazed, confused, barely able to see or speak, he was handed a will to sign. And as for his mother, the doctors told her the harsh truth: hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. Because it was time to put him out of his misery. When they opened him up, the truth was worse than anyone expected. Van Dijk's appendix had burst, his stomach was inflamed, and his kidneys were infected. He was literally dying. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But Van Dijk, he's built different. A few hours later, he woke up, dazed, feeling like the whole thing had been a bad dream. Then the doctors walked in and hit him with reality. He had been seconds away from death. They had saved his life. Right then and there, Van Dijk made a promise. He wasn't going to take his blessing for granted. Because in an instant, everything can change. Just like that time a footballer got kidnapped in the middle of a game. Yeah, that actually happened back in 2019, in Sicily, home of the Mafia. A group of ski-masked maniacs were plotting to make history. They knew this wasn't just any football match, it was a championship. And all the spotlight, it was on him. Yeah, this was the final game of his career. And when a criminal organization saw the perfect chance to go viral, it didn't take a genius to figure out that things were about to get crazy. The crowd was electric, ready to celebrate their hometown team's victory. But nobody wanted this win more than Ignacio Barbagallo. This was his last shot at glory before walking away from the game forever. Little did he know, he should have been saying goodbye to everything. Ignacio wanted to go out with a bang, but not like this. One moment, it was football. The next, it was straight out of GTA. His kidnapping triggered a full-scale investigation. The entire city's police force was now on the hunt. For 3 months, all football competitions in the city were shut down, until the truth finally came out. This was Italian football's craziest controversy. And the wildest part? Ignacio planned the whole thing. Yeah, just because he wanted to make headlines. That kinda reminds me of the woman who's been secretly ruining Ronaldo's life. It's 2017. Ronaldo just cashed a $3 million check, and his phone's blowing up. Calls, texts, non-stop. So he jumps on his private jet, handling business like usual. But this is where the problems start. See, Ronaldo was flying in and out of Madrid so often that if he had to book one more flight himself, he might as well have gotten a red card in real life. You really think Ronaldo was about to waste time booking his own flights? What is he, a normal person? Nah, he needed a trusted travel agency, someone who could lock in his trips without the headache. That's when a company connected him with one of their top representatives, a 53-year-old woman named Maria Silva. Hey Ronaldo, it's Maria. I heard your schedule's been getting pretty messy, let's work. After their conversation, the two built a strong bond. Ronaldo felt comfortable enough to hand over his banking information, trusting her completely. But what he didn't know, the woman he was dealing with wasn't who she, or the travel agency, claimed to be. For years, Ronaldo had been traveling seamlessly, jet-setting from country to country, enjoying vacations, and living the dream. But one day, his accountant called with news that made his heart skip a beat. Something was seriously off with his bank statements. The accountant knew Ronaldo's schedule down to the minute, where he was, when he was flying. But the statements? They told a completely different story. Flights were being booked to Russia, Angola, the United States, and Ronaldo was nowhere near those places. Something shady was going on, and they needed to get to the bottom of it, fast. Ronaldo and his accountant met up, talked things through, and quickly realized the situation was way bigger than they thought. This wasn't just fraud, someone had stolen his identity. So Ronaldo wasted no time. He called up his lawyer and contacted law enforcement before his millions in savings vanished. The detectives assigned to the case made him a promise: they wouldn't sleep until they found the perpetrator. They dug deep, followed the money, and connected the dots. Until every single clue pointed in the same direction: Maria Silva. For years, Maria had handled a long list of VIP clients, managing millions in their accounts. But behind the scenes, she was struggling to scrape together a couple thousand for herself. So when the opportunity came to work with a billionaire, Maria couldn't see past the Bugattis, the diamond watches, and the millions Ronaldo was raking in every month. She didn't just want that lifestyle, she needed it. And Ronaldo? He was the perfect victim. Once she gained his trust, it was only a matter of time before she abused her position and committed fraud. Maria thought she was slick. Whenever she booked flights for her clients, instead of sending the payments to her company's account, she rerouted the money to herself, pocketing the fees. And guess what? She used Ronaldo's bankroll to cover the actual flight costs. At first, she thought she'd pulled it off flawlessly, but in reality, she was leaving a paper trail the whole time. She just never imagined Ronaldo would notice a few thousand missing. At first, Ronaldo unknowingly covered the cost of over 200 flights. But after the total racked up to over $300,000 in plane tickets, his accountant finally caught on, and immediately alerted law enforcement. Once detectives pieced everything together, Maria was arrested and hit with a 4-year prison sentence. And if that wasn't bad enough, the moment she gets out, she'll still have to pay back every last cent of that $300,000. This is the end of today's stories. So guys, if our video is informative for you, then please subscribe Satifo. Thanks for watching.